Yo, 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 yo. What's good with it, man? It's the homie Mac. Music, art, culture, knowledge. Each one teach one, peace and love. Thumbs up, give me the likes. Thumbs up, give me the likes. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel 82 Kings. You should see that little watermark in the corner of the screen. You can click on it if you're on your laptop or computer or whatever. And you can subscribe to this channel and get this wonderful insight, wonderful information. I'm somewhat iconoclastic, somewhat. But this is a session of Mackin with Mac. Book review series. One of the criticisms that I got on my book reviews is that I kind of I quote too much from the book, and that I give more of a narrative of what the book is about, but not necessarily how I feel about it. So in context in relation to this book, I will let you know how I feel about it as well. It won't just be me trying to line item everything and quote from it, although I will still quote from the book. Mackin with Mac, book review series. I will be reviewing The Devil You Know. The Devil You Know by none other than Charles M. Blow. Yeah, he's also the author of Fire Shut Up in My Bones. He's a New York Times best-selling author. I have not read a lot of his work, but I as far as books, but I have seen like articles, different think pieces he's written. I think Charles M. Blow is a very bright man. I think he has a insight, a perspective that is healthy and ultimately in the best interest of black people. ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. Okay, so let's get to it. Essentially, the premise of this book, he starts talking about racism in the South. Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Georgia, the South. I know this isn't geography class, but I just wanted to make it more real. Conceptualize it, help me conceptualize it. He talks about racism in the South and pretty much says how the impetus behind the migration to the North was essentially based off, it was contingent upon black people trying to get away from racism. Black people trying to put themselves in a position where they can become socially mobile. Let me personalize it. In my life, Detroit, Michigan, I got Detroit, Michigan. I got family in New York, family in D.C. Our lineage starts obviously in Africa, but transatlantic slave trade. We came to the South. My family migrated from South Carolina, specifically Lancaster, South Carolina. Migrated from Lancaster, South Carolina, High Point, North Carolina. Went to New York, moved to Detroit, moved to Philadelphia, moved to Chicago. No, Chicago's on my mother's side, South Mississippi. But the point was, specifically, the point is that we migrated to become more socially mobile. Specifically, RIP my grandfather, Mack Stewart, from Lancaster, South Carolina. Euphonia Cunningham, my grandmother. Hey grandma, hey grandpa. They migrated from Lancaster, South Carolina to Detroit. Specifically to work, my grandfather was working as a factory worker for GM, retired from GM. Made a good life for himself, was able to get a home, American dream type stuff, you know how it goes. But the thing is, even when we got up north, and when I say we, I don't mean necessarily just my family, but transitioning up north, we encountered racism up north. It was just more, it wasn't as, like, it was ever present, it was tangible, but it was like, it was almost like it was like a benign tyranny, in the sense of, we may not call you a nigger, we may not lynch you, though it did happen up north too, specifically in Duluth, Minnesota in 1912, but that's a whole nother conversation. But we'll create policies to subjugate you, make it so that you can't get loans for housing, making sure that you can't get loans for businesses and whatnot, which would subjugate you through economic means, to keep you in a bottom caste. One of the ways that you gain wealth is through home ownership. specifically in Chicago, he talked about how they had these things called covenants, where essentially black people moved up from Mississippi to Chicago. They were becoming more socially mobile. They were gaining capital, and naturally, they felt like, we want to migrate out. We want to migrate out the city. I want to have some land. I want to, be able to move about. But when you leave Chicago, specifically inner city Chicago, the wider it gets. Even though Chicago is gentrified, it gets wider. The wider it gets, and these white people that were living out there in I'm gonna say Skokie, Evanston, these suburbs of Chicago, they created these things called covenants, where basically they were like, look, anyone who sells to a black home, anyone who sells a home to a black person, we're gonna make your life a living hell. We're gonna make it so that nobody else shops with you, no one else pretty much stop the flow of your clientele. And we'll even go as far to physically destroy wherever you work out of. This is white people doing this to other white people. And consequently, black people were boxed out. So it's not, it's not necessarily how it was in the South. I mean, even though there were incidents where people would actually terrorize homes, they would smash out windows, go home, leave here, monkey, the typical babble of a white supremacist. Just do different things to discourage black people from gaining capital and gaining assets and having a home. Well, that's an asset. Check out the movie Suburbicon. Check that movie. I believe Matt Damon is in it, but check out the movie Suburbicon. Great movie. It kind of elucidates what I just said. But yeah, in this book, he pretty much, again, the premise is we left the South to go to the North to become more socially mobile, to manifest the American dream. And consequently, we called it the promise. We thought it was the promised land. And essentially the overarching theme in this book is like, look, these destination cities like New York, he calls them destination cities. I'm sure he's not the only one to call them that, but he identifies them as destination cities in the book. The destination cities being Oakland, California, Detroit, Michigan, New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, so on and so on. These industry hubs. That's what we migrated to those places for the opportunity. But essentially, in this book, he's saying, look, let's migrate back south. Let's come to the South. There's land here. There's opportunity here. If we come down south, we can actually become a voting block and put our money, put our resources together, and we can create the numbers where we can foment political changes. Because essentially we know that politics is not a gift, it's an exchange. But what capital, what resources do black people have essentially to get something in return for their votes? And he's saying if we come together, we can become a voting bloc, we can build our own industries, we can pretty much essentially do it like how the Jews do it. Become self-determined economically, become self-determined politically. I'm not well versed exactly on how the votes are counted or the facticity of how the facticity of how things are counted and put together, and how different votes count and how they're measured. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't necessarily know the specifics of that. But I do know that you have political action committees. You have people who can create a voting bloc, and this could potentially create a change. Because essentially, the nature of politics, there has to be a group of people that get together and show and use their votes to sway politicians. And they have and essentially, I keep saying essentially, there's a lot going on in my head. But in essence, until you create a voter bloc, until you show these politicians, like, wait a minute, I need to serve their best interests, because if I don't, I'm going to get cut off. And we do know that American capitalism, it chiefly respects finances and the loss of life. If we're not, and I'm not advocating murdering anyone for political advocacy. I'm just saying essentially capitalism functions primarily off of those two things: finances and death. I'm saying more so finances, putting our money together, putting our resources together. We can create a Wakanda. I mean, I know that's kind of typical to say, but yeah, that's the overarching premise of the book, and he goes into specifics of how it can be done in this book. I think it's very pragmatic. He's not the first person to say it, but the way he said it, the way he put it together, I thought was pretty dope. What else? I like how in this book he talks about how, you know, a lot of us as black people, we have hope. Hope is like, the idea of hope has been something that's been extremely detrimental to us. And he talks about how, and it's not in an anti-religious way, I mean, depending on how you take it, but he pretty much says how, for the most part, religion, the church, has sold us a sweet by and by narrative, and we're just hoping that the Lord comes through. We're hoping for this and hoping for that. Even though I think, you know, as a Christian myself, I feel like a lot of Christians have not been taught properly the Bible, but that's a whole other conversation. But I think there's legitimacy to what he said. You get to this hoping, but you're not doing. I like how he mentioned Obama. You know, and he was saying how, like, you know, Obama, he sold us a lot of hope. I guess through Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever, that benefited a lot of black people. But as a whole, collectively, the Obama administration did not. It created more white millionaires and billionaires, actually. I don't think on average, the Obama administration really put black people in a better position overall. But you know, it's hard it was not fair for us to expect Barack Obama in 8 years to undo years upon years of injustice, of you know, systemic racism, institutional racism. That was not fair. That was not fair for us to think that he was just going to somehow change all that in 8 years. And then he talked about who else did he talk about in this book? He talked about Booker T. Washington, and I like how he essentially was saying how even though Booker T. Washington was well intended, and even W.B. Du Bois, they were well intended, but to a certain extent, they appeased the white power structure of that time. And they sold black people hope. So let's get off this hope kick. And not even just hope. I mean, they definitely, and this is not a slight, and I didn't feel like what he was saying was a slight to Du Bois or Booker T. Washington, but he was just saying how essentially they were a part of the black bourgeoisie, the black elite, and how essentially their successes did not necessarily trickle down to us as a whole. And he speaks to us becoming very Messiah prone. And we need to break that. We need to be our own saviors. We need to be the people we're looking for. We can build amongst each other. Let's see what I can find. And at first I thought he was just kind of saying, oh, you know, y'all don't need to leave the North, just stay up in the destination cities. But then I came across this. I say to black Americans in destination cities, if you're happy and prospering in those cities, by all means stay. If you feel physically safe, economically secure, culturally celebrated, and spiritually edified, you have found your home. But if that is not your lived experience, if you feel that the place you moved to or where you were born and raised has grown inhospitable, if you have tired of fighting the same battle that your parents fought, there is another option that is not only viable but desirable. I'm saying that the Black South beckons. And I'm with it. I'm with I migrated down here from the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio. I spent some time in Ohio. My family migrated down to Georgia. But yeah, I think this book is really interesting. It's something to consider. I think that this isn't about hero worship, or depending on white people. One of the things I like about this book, he calls out white liberals and saying how they do things maybe on the surface, on a very superficial level that makes them seem like they're down and they're for the cause, but they go back home and they calling us nigger, or they don't really rock with us like that. It's just a photo op. It's an aesthetic to seem progressive, but they don't necessarily stand by us when it comes to policy. It is what it is. Great book, The Devil You Know by Charles and Blow. I suggest you check it out. Let's see. Normally I say who published, what the publishing company. Give me 1 second. This book was published by HarperCollins Publishers. Yeah. The Devil You Know. Check it out. It's the homie Mack. Music, art, culture, knowledge. Each one teach one. Thumbs up, give me the likes. It's the homie Mack, man. Signing out from the Dogon. Each one teach one.